Hello, we are so thrilled to have Judith Dack with us today. Judith is the parent of a young woman who is differently abled. She is also an Anat Baniel Method NeuroMovement practitioner and a Feldenkrais practitioner at Uptown Studio in Toronto. Judith has also mentored several practitioners across Canada, including myself. So we are so excited to have you today. Thank you for being with us.
For having me, Christine.
So I thought we would begin by getting a sense of how you started your journey and how you came across the Anat Baniel Method NeuroMovement.
Well, it happened many, many years ago. Firstly, I was a dancer as a young woman, and I had a knee injury. And my mother, for my birthday, gave me a workshop with Moshe Feldenkrais. And Moshe Feldenkrais was actually Anat's mentor and teacher. And so he came to Toronto in 1981 and he gave a workshop. And at that time, the word neuroplasticity or brain-body connection was really not heard in the public domain at all. But I did this workshop with him, and afterwards I remember feeling like I couldn't tell you what happened, but I could say that I felt like I was the Tin Man in The Wizard of Oz, and somebody came along with a tin can and just, squirted oil all over my joints of my body, but also the gears in my brain, such that I noticed that not only was I able to, use my body more easily, but I was also able to think more clearly and more succinctly and more quickly. And I just was so impacted by him. He was actually about 80 years old at the time. I mean, he was an elderly man at that point. And so Anat studied with him for many, many years. And as they traveled together to see clients around the world, Europe and America, he would ask Anat to work with the children. And so she began to develop a real repertoire of working with many, many children and becoming actually a level of expertise actually in working with children. And now she's world renowned. So moving forward, I had have a child, and she ran into a lot of difficulties at a very young age and stopped moving and developed a huge amount of pain and suffering in her body and had to be hospitalized. And we found out shortly after that she had a type of autoimmune disease, which has a systemic picture, as well as all the destruction of the joints and the ability to move. So when she was about 2.5 or 3.5, there was a Feldenkrais training in Toronto, and they invited me to bring Dahlia, that's my daughter, to the training to be worked on as part of their practicum, part of their testing. And so I brought her to the room at University of Toronto, and I looked around, and the whole place was completely quiet. And everybody was working. And I looked around, and all the people that were on the tables, because we do our work on a table, on a low table, all the people that were worked on were completely at ease and calm, and all the practitioners were giving them all this wonderful attention and moving their bodies very gently. And I said to myself, this is what I need to learn. And I looked around the room and I saw this man, and I said, and that's the man I need to speak to. So about 6 months later, I was taking my Feldenkrais training, and about 10 or 15 or 20 years later, I was doing my Anat Baniel Method training, and now I'm doing another training called Child Space. So I have been living and working in this world of neuroplasticity and the brain-body connection for a very long time.
Thank you for that. That's a journey filled with multiple experiences, and it's really wonderful that you found out that this could really be helpful for your daughter as well.
Yes, and I think that that is, one of the wonderful things about being a parent, and having that kind of love, that I think probably the love between a parent and a child is so unique. There's such a commitment there to unconditional love. And I think that when we really start to experience the practicality of that kind of love in our life, it opens so many doors. When I was when Dahlia was very young, there weren't even any computers, by the way. Just, I hope you don't think of me as a dinosaur, but to find out about her disease process, I had to go to the library, walk to the library, and there was one little tiny red book in the library about her disease process. And that's how I had to start. I wasn't up at midnight, searching the internet for autoimmune diseases and her particular kind of autoimmune disease, and, what I should do and how I could help her, how I could feed her, how I could help her move again. There wasn't any of that at all, So I think that is one of the first ways that we see the manifestation of that kind of love in ourselves, is how we are longing, yearning to help our child, and then we see ourselves in action. And it's really quite something to be open to witnessing yourself, being open to witnessing the love that you are demonstrating as you search for help for your child. Just wanted to say that. Yeah. I was just going to say, I do a lot of workshops and work with parents, and for me, the parents really are the agents of change. They really are the ones that make everything possible for their children. They are the ones that stand behind that child and, walk with them every step of the way. And it's such an interesting dynamic, because I think at first, when we realize that our child is in trouble, there's a tremendous amount of, there's that song. It goes like this: when something is wrong with my baby, something is wrong with me. And it's like that, So at first it's really like that. And it's hard. And it's hard to face it. It's hard to face the grieving of it, the sadness of it, the almost helplessness of what to do. All of those stages are very real and profound in their intensity. But slowly, as we begin to move forward with our child and search for what we can do to help them, it's like, as I said, then you start to become a little bit more open to that reflection that you're getting back, and open to new possibility and to hope. And at a certain point, I remember such an epiphany in me as I was walking beside Dahlia on this journey. I realized I was so honored to be the one that got to walk beside her and bear witness to her life. And then I would walk further, and I then was like starting to notice what was happening to me because of this journey, because of the way that life just took my heart and went, open up to this thing that all that is calls love, And so I really think that this is something that doesn't get spoken about enough with parents. That's why I love parents, and I feel one with the parents because I am a parent, and that really is what lies ahead of all our young parents on this journey,
This is so true what you're saying, because there is really that process. It really does start with the grieving, and then we move into this place of acceptance. But there's this place beyond that is embracing. And it's true that this isn't communicated all that much, because parents often don't realize that there's this other place that is really beautiful with our children, that we can get there, but that they need tools to get there, right? They need to understand what the process is, what needs to be healed, how to begin to really see the child, right? And I think in many ways, we're speaking of ABM today, but in many ways, ABM helps us begin to truly see the child, right? So perhaps you could tell us a little bit about the difference between ABM and other forms of therapy, and how that plays into this idea of bringing the parent to embrace the child.
Well, first of all, ABM really stands for Anat Baniel. That's her name. That is where I told you about Anat being one of Moshe's students for many years. And it's actually called the Anat Baniel Method of NeuroMovement. So when we hear the word NeuroMovement, that actually refers to a method that is based on the brain-body connection. That's where you get the neuro for the brain, and then movement for the body. So NeuroMovement. So the Anat Baniel Method, based on the work of Dr. Feldenkrais, is really looking into the child's development of the brain-body connection. Now, what does that mean? Well, for us who are way beyond the mapping process of ourselves, who we are, what does it mean to have a body? What does it mean to move in space? What does it mean to learn to respect the laws of gravity? We don't really remember what process we went through as a baby. So for a neurotypical baby, children go through a great apprenticeship of exploration, movement exploration, where they go from coming out of the womb very flexed, and then they begin to explore a little bit in that flexed position, and then they move to adding a little extension and a little rotation, which slowly brings them onto their side, and then eventually onto their stomach, and then eventually drawing up one leg and approximating the first developmental stage of crawling. So there's a whole process that all of us human beings go through, a neurodevelopmental process that we go through. However, if a child is born with difficulties, genetic issues, loss of oxygen at birth, syndromes, anything, could be anything at all, their development is sometimes not considered neurotypical, so that they may not be able to generate enough movement to begin to develop this whole beautiful, rich process of mapping, such that as they map themselves and their movements, that develops their neural network in their brain. That means that it develops pathways inside of our brain, that every time then that a child wants to grab something, that pathway has been grooved in the brain so that they go, oh, I want that toy. And they know how to rotate their body, how to extend their arm and their hand, how to then grasp the thing that they want in their hand and bring it to their mouth or whatever they might want to do. I mean, that's how complex and how complex it is, but also how we've forgotten all of that, Christine. We don't remember that process. And for a child that has difficulties, that process has to be recreated. Not just by like, okay, let's do the flexing the bicep thing, or let's develop strength, let's do some, get the core going. It doesn't really live there. It lives in the brain. It lives in the motor cortex. That is where we need to wake up the brain, which is exactly what this method is looking to do. We use movement in very specific ways to access this motor cortex, to access the ability of the brain to feel and sense what is happening to us. As a baby or a child learns to feel and sense what's happening to them more clearly, their brain starts to wake up and makes new pathways in the brain, makes new connections in the brain. Oh, when I want something, I need to do this and grab it. Oh, but it doesn't feel so comfortable if I do it that way, but if I do it this way, it feels really comfortable. That's called feeling and sensing what's happening to you more clearly. And as the brain gets all that myriad of kinesthetic exploration, it always chooses the best way to do something. So a neurotypical baby goes through that development by generating all that movement exploration, like I said, but a baby that has difficulties does not get enough movement exploration. So that is where ABM comes in, the Anat Baniel Method of NeuroMovement. And us as practitioners begin to work with children looking to actually replicate those movement development stages as best we can, approximate those stages as best we can with a hands-on, very gentle, very slow, very rich self-education that the child begins to learn to feel and sense themselves. So it's like we're replicating the stage of rolling over. We're replicating the stage of rolling onto the tummy. We're helping them replicate what it takes to lift the head off the floor. We're replicating what it means to roll the pelvis and draw up the leg to begin to feel what it feels like to begin to commando crawl. All of those stages. So that really is the first part of what the method would look like if you brought your child to have lessons. Some of the distinctions of the method, though, as I mentioned, was we do things very slowly, such that the child has time to feel and sense. Many children that have had difficulties at birth or in utero, or maybe a stroke in utero or whatever, are capable of many, many things. But they need to learn them slowly. They need to learn to find their way through that forest where there's so many branches and trees. They have to learn to sort of cut a path through the forest to be able to go from one stage to the next stage to the next stage. So it has to be done slowly. And it has to be done gently, such that the child, when I'm working with the child, it feels as if to them that they are moving themselves, that I am not moving them. They are moving themselves. And if the experience is kinesthetically fulfilling and beautiful, they look to reproduce that. They look to recreate that for themselves. I've never seen a child who had to go and do this kind of thing look to recreate. Well, maybe they do if they're like superheroes or something, but generally they don't look to recreate that thing. They don't. But if it's rolling and it's gentle and I've given them time to feel it and just, really go slowly at it and it becomes theirs, oh my gosh, they want to recreate that movement. And that rolling movement is so important because rotation, which if I want to reach behind myself and get something behind myself, rotation is something that we do 1,000,000 times a day. So you can see, you're beginning to see anyway, a little bit of how important some of these distinctions in the method are: the variation, the slow, the gentle. I can go on and on.
Well, one of the things that is truly beautiful is how empowering it is, right? When you're working with the children and you're creating this opportunity for them to feel like they're doing it, and then giving them the tools to recreate that afterwards. So in essence, we're, as practitioners, truly building their confidence.
Building their confidence, yes. And also, we are waking up their brain. So waking up the brain means that the child starts to pay attention to what's happening in the lesson. We call the time together with the child lessons as opposed to sessions, because we are not looking to fix a child. We are looking to connect to a child and to find out where those gaps are and to work with the child to fill in those gaps. So we call our sessions lessons. And that is also important for parents to understand. This is a learning modality. It's really giving your child a self-education. And that, for me, I look back now to Dahlia and I say to myself, self-education was the best thing I could have ever given her. Because it's her that has to learn how to move forward in life with her body, with her mind, with her emotions, with her friends, with, looking for work, for whatever it might be. Movement is life. Without movement, life is unthinkable. So the moving with attention is another one of our distinctions. Beginning to have that child to wake up to the feeling of what's happening to them and being curious about it. That is something that we as parents, there's a lot of these things parents can do at home. They can work with a practitioner, but then the practitioner can also teach the parents little ways of thinking and creating games and things at home that they can also take the method home with them, such that it becomes a way of life, the slowing down. Because really, let's think about it, Christine. What is the one thing that we can give our child besides love? Time. Our children often need more time. So perhaps you might say a neurotypical child is, pretty much organized by, say, 4, 5, 6, 7. Our children often take much longer, but they're still looking to replicate or approximate that same neurodevelopmental process. So time is something that we can give our child. That is one of the biggest gifts, besides unconditional love. Is probably the second biggest gift. So don't be in a hurry. Give them the time that it takes to figure things out, because they are built to figure things out, just like you and I. And nobody's counting the time. All that is, whatever you want to call that power, is not counting the time. Life is not counting the time. Nature is not counting the time. Why should we? Because advertising tells us we should? No. Our child is telling us they need more time. Therefore, we need to give them more time.
Actually, one of the things that I've always admired about you is how you connect with the children. You really get them. You really understand, the timing that they need, how long they need to process things, what they need, how they need you to show up for them. This is something, as your student, I've really admired and learned so much from you. So I wondered if you could share a little bit about that and how you show up for the children as a practitioner.
That's a really interesting question. And I think that the most important thing for me is really being able to connect with the child. And when that will be part of every parent's journey, I think, is learning to connect with the person in front of you and the beauty that they are. Every human being is is so magnificent, you know, and so different in so many ways. And somehow it's like that love again, that opens you up such that you can be present to the little human in front of you. And I really highly regard attunement. For me, that is my biggest joy, really, is to attune to every little being that comes in the door here. And I, you know, it's funny because I almost feel like they find me, you know, somehow. I mean, I know that sounds silly because it's the parents that find me, but somehow I feel that the kids also have a say in that, you know, because I don't know, that's just how I feel. But I think that really is such a gift to give our children, is that when they feel that somebody is actually seeing them and making room for them and listening to them and looking for those areas that are not colored in, that there's not enough self-image there, there's not enough blue color there, there's not enough purple color there, and actually creating learning experiences for them to start to fill in those gaps. I think those children are so grateful. They are so happy. You know, that's one thing, you know, I sometimes have parents who bring their children who have been doing maybe a different kind of therapy, and they'll come in and they'll say to me, well, I don't know how he's going to be with you because in the other therapy we did, he cried for 1.5 years. And it's so interesting to hear that. I mean, is there not enough sorrow and confusion in this world already that we would have to have our children crying for 1.5 years in their therapy? So what I love is to see how children love to learn. They're born to learn. They're hardwired to learn. And when we can find ways to teach the children about their own being and how to move it and how to organize it and how to feel with it and how to discern with it and how to make connections with it, they get so happy and so, you know, their self-image just starts to unfold and emerge, and it's like, oh my God, this is beauty. It's just like, you know, you almost feel like that word, you know, which we never use this word, but that word, behold. I mean, it's like, then you go, wow, I just used that word. I mean, that's a really heavy word, behold, like, you know, but then I hear myself saying it and it's like, wow, that's how impacted I am by these children and their willingness and their openness to learn. And gosh, they learn. And gosh, they start to do all kinds of things, you know? I always have this fun story about this 5-year-old who came to see me, and he was on the spectrum. And he came to see me, and he came in the studio with his father, and he just started to run around the room at like 100 miles an hour, run this way, run that way, unearth anything he can, run some more. And the father was like, you know, like this. And so I brought him into the practice room and, you know, lay him on the table and taught him a little movement. It was like with bent knees, pushing through the feet, lifting the pelvis and shooting along the table. And so I taught it to him, and then I said, okay, now we're gonna do it really fast. You know, let's do it really fast. And he was like, oh man, I'm in my glory here, really fast. And then I said, now let's do it really, really slow. And he was like, And he did it really, really slow. So you see all the modeling you see, and that's another whole conversation for parents, is really modeling. So I modeled slow for him, and he did it. And then I said, now let's do it medium. So now all of a sudden he's becoming present to these concepts and distinctions between fast, which is how he does everything, slow, and then medium. And so then we just did the lesson with him doing it fast, doing it slow, doing it medium, doing it slow, doing it fast, doing it fast, doing it fast, doing it slow, doing it medium. So it was really incredible. So the next day they came back for another lesson. And the father said, Jude. I said, yeah. He said, you'll never guess what happened. No, I can't guess. He said, last night was the first time my child was able to sit at the dinner table and have dinner with his family. Now, was I expecting to get that feedback? No. I had no idea that how the lesson was going to show up in an area which was very important to the child and the family was him being able to sit at the table and eat his dinner with his beloveds. I had no idea that's what I was going to hear, you know? So that was really quite amazing for me to witness how that child's brain-body connection took the lesson and did something. And that's what we see in the lessons, is that the children have lessons and then their brain-body connection, which is waking up, figures out what to do with it. Just amazing.
I think this speaks a lot to the power of this method, right? That it's not, we use the body to fill in those gaps. However, the changes that occur when they integrate, it really creates change across the board. So we can truly see changes everywhere. Would you like to speak to that a little bit more?
Well, the thing it's true what you say. And the reason is we use movement as an access to the brain. Why? Because movement is the biggest job that a brain does. So a brain has to organize our movement. So right now, my head is moving a little bit if I'm nodding. I'm using my hands. I'm talking. At the same time, I'm breathing. My blood is flowing. I'm moving my back a little bit when I'm using my body to show you about rotation. So the brain is organizing that all the time, and it's a huge, huge job. So when we want to have a conversation with the brain about upgrading its ability to function, we use movement, because movement is where the brain is living a huge amount of the time. It's living in the world of, how can I organize Judith moving her hand right now? Now she just shifted her weight back to sit in the chair and closed her hand a little bit. I have to organize all these things. My goodness, it's a lot to do, isn't it? So there's many learning modalities and therapy modalities out there. Ours is movement-based. But as you said, it actually activates a brain globally. So that's why I gave the example of that child, because you can see upgrade and change on any level. I've had children who've come for lessons and gone back to school, and for the first time they've made friends and started to be able to talk to other people. I've had children that had very, very little movement and learned the beginning of commando crawling. I mean, anything across the board. So many things that weren't possible before. Learning how to swallow and drinking water for the first time. It just could go on and on and on and on.
And in many ways, this method can be so powerful, not only for the children, but also for the parents, right? As parents, we can transform immensely with this modality. I don't know if you could speak to that a little bit.
Well, that is very true on a lot of different dimensions. Because if you bring your child for lessons, first of all, you shift your ability to perceive. So, we're always looking for changes. If we bring our child for help, for therapy, for lessons, whatever, we're always looking to be able to see things. But the issue is that seeing is also habitual. So I remember when Dahlia was really, really young, and maybe a friend would come over or something, and the friend would say, "Wow, Jude, Dahlia seems a lot better this week." And I go, "Really?" Because I didn't have the ability at that point to discern, to make the distinction that, she was actually maybe a slight bit better. But that person who hadn't seen her since maybe a month ago or whatever, and then saw her then, could see that she was in a little better place than she was a month ago. So what is possible for us is to upgrade our ability to see and to perceive changes. And small changes, subtle changes, are the changes that we really integrate as a human being. Those are the changes that we make our own when they're not too big. It's like, okay, from now on, I'm not, going to eat sugar. Really? Okay, good luck with that. But I think I'll just take a little vacation from sugar for a few days and see how it goes. Because I really just want to see if I can just go a little time without eating sugar, because I feel like, I've been eating too much. So I feel I've been eating too much, and I'd like to just see if I could maybe lay off it for a few days. Who's going to have the most success? The person that is going to go off sugar for the rest of their life, or the person who is going to try to take a little vacation from sugar for a few days because they really feel they've been eating too much and they'd like to just be a little more conscious about that? Probably the second one, So it's like that. It's like that's what happens in these lessons. But parents a lot of times are not used to seeing the delicate little changes that begin to happen when all of a sudden that child's brain just wakes up, and they look and they turn to you and they can feel what you're doing and they like it, and they're like begin to help you a little bit, do the movement, and you begin to see that brain-body connection just expanding, clarifying, distilling, just discerning, distinguishing. And what happens is the children get smarter, their brain starts to work better, but the parents undergo this process, if they're willing, to really begin to notice these kinds of subtle changes. And I think that has a huge impact on anybody's life, because you don't just discern the small changes here in the private practice room. You begin to discern them in your own life. You begin to make distinctions that you weren't making before. And so that's one dimension of it. Another dimension of it, I spoke at the beginning, of staying the course through this process, of all the emotions that are also habitual. When something new happens that we don't understand, there's a habitual process that most human beings go through: the grieving, the sadness, the sorrow, the why me, the anger, all of that. Although I found anger to be very useful because it got me to the library. But so we can use some of these emotions too for our benefit. But as we talked about in the beginning, that as we continue on this journey and we practice being present and being available for our child, then our heart starts to open and our heart starts to get bigger, and our ability to love just grows and grows and grows and grows. So not only does your child benefit from that, but between you and me and the lamppost, the whole world benefits from your ability to have more compassion circulating in you, more unconditional love circulating in you, more attentiveness, more awareness circulating in you. You become more useful to everybody in the world, to everything that's going on. So that's another dimension. There's so much available for all of us. We just have to face our fear.
Yes.
I mean, and that's going on even right now, for all of us, we just have to face our fear every day and just say, I'm not going to buy in anymore.
That's very true. Fear can be a bit of a crutch for us, right? Really, really hold us back.
And I think with our children, it's the fear, it's like even our fear channel in our brain is also filled with TV shows and, unhappy endings and sorrowful thises and that's. And even is like that the truth? No, because if a child can learn, the possibilities are endless. The possibilities are limitless. So that's the thing that we really have to get clear about, is that brain-body connection can get turned on. And when that brain-body connection is turned on, that brain can learn. And when that brain starts to learn, it's a whole new world. That's what gives me hope. That's what should give parents hope, is the learning. And what do they get to learn? About themselves. That's the gift you want to give them, to learn about themselves.
I think the beauty with this method is the freedom. So when we look at the possibilities being endless, we're not looking at rigid goals, having specific intentions. It's very much dancing with the child, flowing with the child, seeing the child and seeing those things that are innate within them, right? Allowing them to shine. Don't know if you had more to add to that.
Well, just that, I think that's very true. And I think that a good practitioner will be sensitive to what it is that shows up at any one time, and that was witnessed by the child who took the lesson and put it into something that was important for him, which was to be with his family in a way that his family could be with him, that he could feel a part of his family, So I think that, I completely agree with what you're saying. Yeah.
Do you have any last words of wisdom for our listeners today?
Well, I think there's been lots of words of wisdom, but I think the most important thing is parents, even if nobody acknowledges who you be, I acknowledge who you be. I acknowledge who you are and what this takes, and know that you are not alone. You are not alone. And there are many parents, my mother used to tell me this story. She said that there were 3 children in my family. And she told me that one night she had 3 children who were sick in the house. That was me and my brother and my sister. And she was exhausted and probably washing sheets. I won't go into the detail of why she had to wash sheets. Somebody was throwing up, obviously. And, was exhausted and just, she was pretty worn down by it all. And she tells the story that she went to the kitchen to wash her hands, to the kitchen sink to wash her hands, and to get a glass of water. And she was there feeling pretty worn out, And she said to me, all of a sudden, I felt the arms of all the mothers in the world who have gone through what I've gone through with children sick at home and all of that, reach out and grab hold of me. And some of these stories that my mother used to tell me really stuck with me. Like, I guess I was very, very open to her and very much in love with my mother, And so these stories that she would tell me would really impact me. And that's what I would say to the parents today, that you are not alone. Here are my arms, here are my hands reaching out. But I think that you'll find that as you go along this journey, there will be lots of support and lots of help and lots of arms reaching out to you and help for your journey and your child's journey.
Thank you so much, Jude, for this time. Thank you for all of this wonderful information and for sharing all of your wisdom with us today. I'm sure all the parents listening will truly benefit, as I have. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Christine. It was lovely seeing you.